My daughter-in-law Googled divorce after inheritance while my son was dying of cancer. Her name was Vanessa Hayes, and she thought she'd just inherited $5 million. For 6 years, this woman called me the plumber and banned me from my own son's house. But when Brian got sick, I wasn't going to let her keep me away anymore. I started showing up at that hospital every single day, and that's when I began noticing things. Things like how she visited him 4 times in 8 months, while I was there every day. Things like her secret phone calls about property values and divorce lawyers. Things like the bank statements I saw her hiding, and the Google searches I caught glimpses of on her laptop. So I started documenting everything. Hey everyone, I'm Richard, and if this story hits you the same way it hit me, I'd love to have you along for more real-life justice stories. Please subscribe and drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from. Because what I discovered about my daughter-in-law was worse than I ever imagined, and what I did about it changed everything. Let me take you back to where this all started. My name is Richard Hayes. I'm 68 years old, and for 6 years, I've been fighting for scraps of my own son's attention. I raised Brian alone after my wife Margaret died when he was 23, worked double shifts as a plumber to put him through Portland State. By the time he graduated with his computer science degree, he was making $185,000 a year at Global Tech Industries. Me? I was still in my 850-square-foot trailer in Gresham, driving a 15-year-old Ford pickup. That's when Brian met Vanessa at some tech industry party in 2018. 28 years old, called herself a lifestyle influencer. And I could see the calculation in her eyes the first time she looked at my boy. The exclusion started immediately. "Dad, maybe we should meet at coffee shops for a while," Brian told me after their engagement. "Just until Vanessa gets more comfortable." More comfortable. That was code for, until you disappear. But I wasn't going to disappear, so I adapted. Christmas 2018. I showed up to their holiday party uninvited. Walked right up to the front door of their rental house with a gift for Brian. Vanessa answered the door in a designer dress, looked me up and down in my Walmart button-down, and said loud enough for everyone to hear, "Oh, the plumber's here." Not Brian's dad, not Richard, the plumber. "I brought Brian a Christmas gift," I said. "How thoughtful. Brian's busy with guests right now, but I'll make sure he gets it." She took the wrap tool set I'd spent 2 weeks' pay on and shut the door in my face. Through the window, I watched her walk to the kitchen and drop my gift on the counter like garbage. Watched her return to her guests without even telling Brian I'd been there. That's when I realized this wasn't about comfort. This was war. Spring 2019. They bought the house in West Hills. 4,200 square feet, granite counters, 3-car garage, $2 million worth of Brian's dreams. "You'll love the basement workshop I'm building," Brian told me during one of our mandated coffee shop meetings at Stumptown. "Got all the latest plumbing tools. When do I get to see it?" "Soon, Dad. Vanessa's just still settling in. But I was done waiting for permission to see my son, so I started showing up. Not to cause trouble, just to maintain my relationship with Brian. If she wanted to make it difficult, I'd work around her." Saturday mornings, I'd arrive at 7 a.m. when Brian was in the garage working on his car. Vanessa was always still asleep. "Dad, you can't keep doing this," Brian would whisper, glancing nervously at the house. "Why not? It's your garage, isn't it?" "You know why not." But I kept coming, because every Saturday morning I got to be Brian's father for 2 hours before his wife woke up and reminded him that I was an embarrassment. Summer 2020, the housewarming party. Brian didn't invite me, but I drove by anyway. Saw 30 cars in the driveway, heard laughter from the backyard. So I parked across the street and called Brian's cell phone. "Dad, I can't talk right now." "I'm outside, son. I can see your party." Long pause. "Dad, please don't do this." "Do what? Come to my son's housewarming? You know Vanessa will—" "I'm not asking for much, Brian. 5 minutes. I want to see what you built." Another pause. Then, "Meet me at the side gate in 10 minutes. That night, Brian gave me a 5-minute tour of his house while his wife entertained 30 other people. 5 minutes to see what my son had accomplished. 5 minutes stolen from his own housewarming party. "The basement workshop is incredible, Dad. I installed a pipe threader just like yours." "It's beautiful, son. Someday you'll be able to come over properly, when things settle down." But I was starting to understand that things were never going to settle down. Vanessa's goal wasn't my eventual acceptance. It was my complete elimination. Fall 2021, that's when she implemented the appointment system. Dad, Vanessa thinks we should schedule our visits in advance. It's more organized. Organized, like I was a dental cleaning. What kind of schedule? Every other Sunday. 2 hours. Coffee shop. What if I want to see you more than that? Dad, please, I'm trying to make this work for everyone. But it wasn't working for me. 2 hours every 2 weeks to see my only child? After raising him alone for 15 years? So I started testing boundaries. Random Tuesday phone calls. Unexpected visits to his office building during lunch. Showing up at his regular grocery store on Saturday mornings. Dad, you're making things harder, Brian would say. Harder for who? For me. I'm stuck in the middle. That's when I realized Brian wasn't just being controlled. He was being manipulated. And the manipulation was working. But I had 35 years of loving that boy. She had 3 years of strategic positioning. Time to level the playing field. October 2023. I started keeping records. Every phone call Vanessa hung up on when she answered Brian's phone. Every time she forgot to give him my messages. Every excuse about why I couldn't come to family events. I bought a small notebook and wrote it all down. Times, dates, witnesses. Because if Vanessa Hayes wanted to play the long game, she was about to learn that plumbers are very good at finding leaks. And I was beginning to suspect there were leaks everywhere. March 15th, 2024. The call that changed everything. Brian's voice was shaky when he called that Tuesday morning. Dad, I need to see you. Can you meet me at OHSU? The hospital? Why? Can you come? Room 314. I found him sitting on an examination table in a hospital gown looking like he'd aged 5 years since Sunday. Stage 4 pancreatic cancer, Dad. 3 to 6 months if I'm lucky. The words hit me like a sledgehammer. My boy, my only child. What do the doctors say about treatment? Aggressive chemo. Might buy me some time. He paused. Vanessa's already researching private facilities in Seattle. Better amenities, she says. Of course she was thinking about amenities while my son was dying. Brian, whatever you need, whatever it costs. Dad, there's something else. Something I need to tell you about Vanessa. He looked around the empty room, then leaned closer. She's been different since the diagnosis. Asking weird questions about my insurance policies, my retirement accounts, whether my will is up to date. A chill ran down my spine. What kind of questions? Like whether she's the primary beneficiary on everything, whether the house would go to probate if something happened to me, whether life insurance pays out for cancer deaths. I felt sick, and it wasn't from the hospital smell. She asked me yesterday if I thought you'd try to contest my will if I died. Contest it? Son, I don't even know what's in it. That's what I told her. But she said we should be prepared for family drama. Said working class people always think they're entitled to money they didn't earn. Working class people, like me. Brian, has Vanessa always talked about money this much? Not until I got sick. Now it's like, I don't know, like she's planning for something. That's when I made my decision. If Vanessa was planning for Brian's death, then I was going to start planning too. Starting that afternoon, I became a different kind of father. Not the patient one waiting for permission to see his son. The protective one who was going to find out exactly what my daughter-in-law was up to. April 2024. I started spending every day at that hospital. Not just visiting hours. All day. From 7 a.m. when the doors opened until 9 p.m. when they kicked me out. Vanessa hated it. Richard, you don't need to be here constantly, she said during one of her rare appearances. Brian needs rest. He's dying, Vanessa. I'm not missing what time we have left. You're being dramatic. The doctors are optimistic about the treatment. But I was watching the doctors' faces. I was listening to their conversations. And optimistic wasn't the word I'd use. More importantly, I was watching Vanessa. May 2024. That's when I started noticing the phone calls. She'd step out into the hallway for privacy, but hospital walls are thin. I could hear fragments. Property values in West Hills. How soon after? Liquid assets versus... One Tuesday afternoon, she left her laptop open at Brian's bedside while she went to get coffee. The screen showed a Wells Fargo login page for an account I'd never seen before. Brian, Did you open a new bank account recently? No. Why? Just curious about your finances, making sure everything's organized. That night, I drove to the Wells Fargo branch on Division Street and asked to speak with a manager about my son's accounts. I'm sorry, Mr. Hayes, but I can only discuss accounts with authorized users. What if I'm listed as an emergency contact? Let me check. I show a Brian Hayes with accounts here, but you're not listed. Only Vanessa Hayes has access. Accounts. Plural. How many accounts? I can't discuss specifics, but the manager looked around, then leaned closer. Your son might want to review his account activity. Recent transactions have been unusual. That's when I knew. Vanessa wasn't just planning for Brian's death, she was preparing for it financially. Over the next 2 months, I became a detective. I started documenting everything. Vanessa's absences, her phone calls, her computer usage when she thought no one was looking. And what I discovered was going to change everything. Because my daughter-in-law had made one crucial mistake. She'd underestimated what a father will do when his son is running out of time. July 2024. Brian's first round of chemo had left him weak, but his mind was still sharp. Sharp enough to notice what I'd been documenting for months. Dad, you've been taking a lot of notes lately. We were sitting in his hospital room during afternoon visiting hours. Vanessa was at her wellness appointment, the third one that week. Just keeping track of your care, making sure the doctors don't miss anything. What kind of care notes include Vanessa's phone conversations? I'd been caught. Time to show my cards. Brian, I need to show you something. I pulled out my notebook. 3 months of careful documentation. May 14th, Vanessa receives call from Derek at Mackenzie Real Estate. Call duration, 23 minutes. May 20th, Vanessa Googles Oregon inheritance law spousal rights on laptop while you're sleeping. June 2nd, Vanessa opens Wells Fargo account statements, quickly closes them when I enter room. June 8th, overheard phone call. How soon can properties be listed after the situation resolves? Brian's face went pale. Dad, you're spying on my wife. I'm protecting my son. There's a difference. She's grieving too. She's scared about our future. Brian, she's planning for a future without you, while you're still alive. That weekend, I decided to take a more direct approach. Vanessa was hosting one of her influencer brunches at the house. Posted about it on Instagram, gathering my soul sisters during this difficult time. #support system #grief journey. I showed up uninvited, rang the doorbell at 11 a.m. sharp, wearing my best shirt and carrying flowers for the hostess. Vanessa answered the door in a white sundress that probably cost more than my truck payment. Richard, we weren't expecting you. I brought flowers for your brunch. Thought it would be nice to meet your friends. Behind her I could see 8 women in designer athleisure, sipping mimosas and picking at artisanal pastries. That's thoughtful, but this is really more of a girl's thing. I understand. I just wanted to drop these off and maybe say hello to everyone. I'm sure they've heard so much about Brian's father. The panic in her eyes was delicious. Actually, let me just put these in water for you. She tried to take the flowers and close the door, but I was already stepping inside. Oh wow, this place is beautiful. Brian did such an amazing job with the renovation. The living room went quiet. 8 pairs of perfectly made-up eyes staring at the old plumber who'd crashed their wellness brunch. Everyone, Vanessa said through gritted teeth. This is Richard, Brian's father. Nice to meet you all, I said, settling into the leather armchair like I belonged there. I hope Vanessa's told you what an incredible young man my son is. Even with the cancer he's fighting so hard. Uncomfortable shifting around the room. Nobody knew what to say about cancer at a mimosa brunch. Richard was just dropping off flowers, Vanessa said loudly. Weren't you, Richard? Actually, I was hoping to hear about your real estate research. Brian mentioned you've been looking into property values. Dead silence. I think there's been a misunderstanding, Vanessa started. Oh, I don't think so. Brian said you've been very thorough, even talked to agents about market timing. That's smart planning. One of her friends, blonde 40s, obviously the queen bee, spoke up. Vanessa, you didn't mention you were thinking about selling. I'm not. Richard is confused. Brian isn't confused. He told me about your conversation with Mackenzie Real Estate. Very detailed discussion about listing strategies. The queen bee looked intrigued. Mackenzie? They're the best in West Hills. Expensive, but they get results. That's what the agent told Vanessa. Said they could get $2.4 million in this market. Vanessa's face had gone white. Richard, I think you should leave. Why? We're just talking about real estate. Your friends seem interested. Another woman joined in. 2.4? Vanessa, this place is gorgeous, but I had no idea it was worth that much. It's not for sale, Vanessa said sharply. But you got an appraisal? The queen bee pressed. No, Richard is misunderstanding. I stood up slowly. Oh, I understand perfectly. You're a young woman dealing with a difficult situation. Of course you're thinking about the future. I walked toward the door, then turned back. I just hope Brian's part of that future planning, since it's his house and all. The room was dead silent as I let myself out. That evening, my phone rang. Brian. Dad, what the hell did you do? I met your wife's friends. Lovely women. Vanessa is furious. She says you embarrassed her in front of everyone. Did I? I was just making conversation about real estate. You know what you did. Brian, what I know is that your wife has been planning to sell your house while you're still alive. What I know is that she's researching inheritance laws like she's studying for an exam. What I know is that she visits you less than I visit the grocery store. Long pause. Dad, are you sure about all this? Son, I've got documentation. Dates, times, witnesses. Your wife isn't planning for your recovery. She's planning for your funeral. Jesus, Dad. The question is, what are you going to do about it? August 2024. Brian was getting weaker, but our relationship was getting stronger. For the first time in 6 years, my son was seeing his wife the way I'd always seen her. Dad, I need to ask you something. We were in his hospital room during one of the rare moments when Vanessa wasn't there. She was at a support group that I suspected was actually a yoga class. Anything, son. If something happens to me, what do you think Vanessa will do? What do you mean? I mean, will she honor my memory? Will she keep the house as a family home? Will she stay connected to you? I could have told him the truth, that she'd probably sell everything and disappear to Europe within 6 months, that she'd block my number and pretend I never existed, that she'd rewrite our family history to exclude me completely. Instead, I said, "What do you think she'll do?" Brian stared at the ceiling for a long time. I think she'll try to erase you from my life completely, even after I'm gone. And how does that make you feel? Angry. Really angry. That's when I knew it was time. Brian, there's something I want to show you. I pulled out a thick folder I'd been carrying for weeks. Bank statements, phone records, internet search histories, real estate consultation notes. Everything I'd been documenting since March. Where did you get all this? I've been investigating your wife, son, and what I found is going to make you sick. The first document was her Wells Fargo statement, the secret account she'd opened 3 days after his diagnosis, $83,000 transferred from their joint accounts over 5 months. She's been siphoning money since the day you got sick. Next, printed screenshots of her Google search history that I'd managed to photograph when she left her laptop open. Oregon divorce law inheritance rights, March 18th, same day as your diagnosis. How to sell inherited property quickly, April 3rd. Portland real estate market trends 2024, April 15th. Life insurance payout timeline, May 2nd. Brian's hands were shaking as he flipped through the evidence. How did you get this? Hospital Wi-Fi, son. She's been using your laptop to research how to get rid of your assets as fast as possible after you die. The final piece of evidence was the most damning, a recorded phone conversation I'd captured on my phone when she stepped into the hallway. Play it. Vanessa's voice, clear as day. Derek, I need to understand the timeline. If I list the property in December, how quickly can we close? Yes, I understand market conditions, but this needs to happen fast. No, there won't be any complications. It's a straightforward inheritance situation. The current owner won't be a factor. The current owner. She was talking about Brian like he was already dead. Dad, this is... Brian's voice cracked. This is evidence that my wife is planning to profit from my death. It gets worse. I showed him the final document, a consultation request she'd submitted to a divorce attorney in June. She was researching divorce while you were getting chemo,
But then she realized inheriting everything would be more profitable than a 50-50 split. Brian was crying now. Not from physical pain, but from the emotional devastation of discovering that his wife had been treating his terminal diagnosis like a business opportunity. What do I do with this information? That's up to you, son. But I have a suggestion. What? We make some plans of our own. That evening, I made 2 phone calls. First to Sharon Wilson, the attorney who'd handled Margaret's estate 12 years earlier. Sharon, I need to discuss will preparation for my son. It's urgent. Of course, Richard. When would you like to schedule a consultation? Tomorrow.
And Sharon?
We're going to need absolute confidentiality. The second call was to Connor Davis, Brian's college friend who'd been visiting regularly. Connor, I need you to do something for me. Can you be at the hospital tomorrow at 2 p.m.? Sure, Mr. Hayes. Is everything okay? Everything's about to be a lot better. Because if Vanessa Hayes thought she could manipulate my dying son for financial gain, she was about to learn what happens when you underestimate a father who's run out of patience. The war was about to begin, and I was finally ready to fight. September 2024. 3 weeks before Brian died, Vanessa made her biggest mistake yet. She threw what she called a celebration of life party while Brian was still alive. It's not a celebration of life like a funeral, she explained to her Instagram followers in a video post. It's celebrating the life we're living now, despite the challenges, showing that love is stronger than fear.
The event was scheduled for Saturday evening at the house. Vanessa had invited 30 people, her influencer friends, some of Brian's co-workers, both sets of parents. I wasn't invited, naturally, but Connor Davis was. And Connor had become my inside man. "Mr. Hayes, you need to hear what she's planning," Connor called me Friday night. "Tell me." "She's treating this like a wake, but Brian's still alive. She's got memorial photos set up around the house. She's asking people to share memories of Brian like he's already gone. And get this, she's registered a charity in Brian's name, and she's asking for donations." "A charity?" "The Brian Hayes Foundation for Cancer Research, set up yesterday. Guess who's listed as the sole board member and financial administrator?" My blood was boiling. She's fundraising off my son's cancer? It gets worse. She's been telling people that Brian specifically asked her to start the foundation as his final gift to the world. But Mr. Hayes, Brian told me yesterday he's never heard of any foundation. That Saturday evening I did something I'd never done before. I crashed the party. Showed up at 7 p.m. in my best suit, carrying a bottle of wine and a folder full of documents. Vanessa answered the door in a black cocktail dress, funeral attire for a party celebrating my living son. "Richard, you weren't invited." "I know, but this is my son's celebration of life, isn't it? Seems wrong to exclude his father." Behind her, I could see the living room full of people holding wine glasses and speaking in hushed, respectful tones, like they were at a viewing. "This is a private event. For Brian's life, I'm Brian's life. I'm the reason he exists." I pushed past her into the house. The scene was surreal. Memorial photos of Brian everywhere, including baby pictures I'd never seen before, clearly taken from my own albums without permission. A donation station set up near the kitchen with information about Brian's foundation. People clustering in small groups, sharing memories of a man who was lying in a hospital bed 12 miles away. I walked straight to the center of the living room and cleared my throat. "Excuse me, everyone. I'm Richard Hayes, Brian's father." The room went quiet. Vanessa was frantically trying to get to me, but I was already speaking. "I wanted to thank you all for celebrating my son's life. It means so much that you're here while he's still fighting." Confused murmurs. Several people looked uncomfortable. "I especially want to thank those of you who've been visiting Brian at OHSU. Your presence means everything to him during this difficult time." More uncomfortable shifting, because most of these people hadn't visited Brian at all. Vanessa finally reached me. "Richard, this isn't the time." "Oh, but it is the time. It's the perfect time to talk about Brian's life, his real life." I pulled out my folder. "For instance, did you know that Brian has been visited by his father every single day for the past 6 months? 167 days straight." I turned to address Vanessa's parents directly. "Patricia, Robert, how many times have you visited your son-in-law in the hospital?" Patricia Dunmore's face went red. "Well,
Hospital visits are difficult. Of course they are. Vanessa, how many times have you visited Brian? Richard, this is inappropriate. I've been keeping track. Would you like me to share the actual number with everyone? The room was dead silent. You could hear ice clinking in glasses. 4 times in 6 months. While your husband is dying of cancer, you visited him 4 times. Gasps around the room. Several of Vanessa's friends were staring at her in shock. But you've had time to start a foundation in his name, haven't you? The Brian Hayes Foundation. When did you discuss that with Brian?
We talked about it. Funny. I was with Brian yesterday, and he'd never heard of any foundation. But I do have some interesting documents about it. I pulled out the charity registration papers Connor had helped me obtain from public records. Sole Administrator, Vanessa Hayes. Financial Oversight, Vanessa Hayes. Board of Directors, Vanessa Hayes. You had no right to access those documents. They're public records, Vanessa. Anyone can see them, including the part where you listed yourself for a $60,000 annual salary as executive director of a charity you created without the knowledge of the person it's named after. The room erupted in whispers. Vanessa's Queen Bee friend was backing away like she'd been contaminated. And just so everyone knows, the Brian Hayes Foundation has raised $8,000 in donations so far. Would you like to guess where that money is currently deposited? Richard, stop this right now. In the same Wells Fargo account where you've been storing the $83,000 you've transferred from Brian's account since March. That's when people started leaving. Not quietly, but quickly and obviously, grabbing purses, making excuses, heading for the door. Wait, Vanessa called after them. This is all a misunderstanding. But I wasn't done. The only misunderstanding, Vanessa, is thinking that I would let you steal from my dying son while pretending to honor his memory. I walked to the door, then turned back to address the remaining guests. Brian is in room 314 at OHSU if anyone would like to actually visit him while he's still alive. Visiting hours are 8 a.m. to 9 p.m. daily. I left her standing in her memorial shrine to my living son, surrounded by donation materials for a fake charity, wearing funeral clothes to a party she'd thrown for herself. That night, Brian called me. Dad, what did you do? I told the truth, son. At your celebration of life party that you weren't invited to. Long pause. She's been running a foundation in my name? She's been running several scams in your name. Dad, I think it's time we made that appointment with Attorney Wilson. Finally, December 6th, 2024, 4 p.m., Wilson & Associates Law Firm, 14th floor of the U.S. Bancorp Tower. The moment I'd been planning for 8 months. Brian had died 3 weeks earlier, and I'd spent those weeks watching Vanessa perform grief while liquidating his assets. Time to end the performance. I arrived early carrying 2 large folders and wearing the same black suit I'd worn to Brian's funeral. Attorney Sharon Wilson met me at the elevator. Richard, are you ready for this? I've been ready since March. The conference room was filling up fast. Vanessa sat at the head of the mahogany table like she was hosting a board meeting, wearing a cream-colored dress that screamed rich widow. Her parents flanked her like bodyguards expecting a windfall. Brian's cousins from Salem sat near the windows, along with Dr. Cooper and Connor Davis. 8 of Vanessa's influencer friends had come to witness her big moment. And sitting in the corner was Derek McKenzie from McKenzie Real Estate, whom Vanessa had brazenly invited to handle the property transition immediately after the reading. Perfect. Maximum witnesses for maximum humiliation. Sharon Wilson called the meeting to order at exactly 4 p.m. Thank you all for being here for the formal reading of Brian Michael Hayes' last will and testament, executed on September 28, 2024. Vanessa's smile faltered slightly. September? I thought his will was from 2019. There have been updates, Mrs. Hayes. Significant updates. I watched the confidence drain from Vanessa's face as Sharon continued. Before we read the will itself, Mr. Richard Hayes has requested to present evidence that influenced these changes. Evidence that Brian specifically asked to be shared with everyone present. This was my moment. 8 months of documentation, investigation, and careful planning. I stood up and opened my first folder. Ladies and gentlemen, my son Brian asked me to show you exactly why his will was changed 3 weeks before his death. I pulled out the hospital visitor logs first. These are the official OHSU visitor records for Brian's room from March through November 2024. Brian's father, Richard Hayes, 184 visits. Brian's wife, Vanessa Hayes, 4 visits. Audible gasps around the room. Dr. Cooper nodded confirmation. 4 visits in 8 months while her husband was dying of cancer. Vanessa shot to her feet. Those records are wrong. I was there constantly. Dr. Cooper, would you like to confirm these records? Dr. Cooper stood up. Mrs. Hayes, I personally maintain detailed visitor logs at Brian's request. He was concerned about documenting family support for legal purposes. These numbers are accurate. I pulled out the next documents. Bank records for a Wells Fargo account opened by Vanessa Hayes on March 18, 2024, 3 days after Brian's diagnosis. Total transfers from Brian's accounts, $83,400. The room erupted in whispers. Vanessa's parents were staring at her in shock. Next, internet search history from the shared laptop in Brian's hospital room. I read them aloud like charges at a trial. March 20th, Oregon inheritance law, spousal rights. April 5th, how to sell inherited property quickly. May 15th, life insurance payout timeline after death. June 22nd, Oregon divorce law asset division. August 10th, Portland real estate agents West Hills. Each item hit the room like a bomb. Vanessa was shaking her head frantically. Brian was dying and his wife was researching how to profit from his death. I pulled out my phone and connected it to the conference room speakers. This is a recording of a phone conversation between Vanessa Hayes and Derek McKenzie, recorded on September 15th in Brian's hospital room. Vanessa's voice filled the room, clear and damning. Derek, I need to understand the timeline. If I list the property in December, how quickly can we close? Yes, I understand market conditions, but this needs to happen fast. No, there won't be any complications. It's a straightforward inheritance situation. The current owner won't be a factor. Derek McKenzie was slumping in his chair, clearly wishing he could disappear, but I wasn't finished. The Brian Hayes Foundation for Cancer Research, registered September 25th, 2024, created without Brian's knowledge while he was in hospice care. I passed around copies of the charity documents. Board of Directors, Vanessa Hayes. Financial Administrator, Vanessa Hayes. Executive Director salary, $60,000 annually. Donations collected so far, $11,200. Current location of funds, Vanessa's secret Wells Fargo account. The influencer friends were backing away from Vanessa like she was radioactive. And finally, the items sold from Brian's estate before probate authorization. I read from Facebook Marketplace screenshots. November 17th, Brian's Gibson Les Paul guitar sold for $1,200. November 19th, golf club set sold for $850. November 23rd, watch collection sold for $3,500. November 26th, rare book collection sold for $900. Total $6,450 in personal effects sold 9 to 15 days after Brian's death. Vanessa was standing now, gripping the table. This is a coordinated attack. He's been spying on me, manipulating my husband. Mrs. Hayes, Sharon Wilson interrupted coldly. I need you to sit down. We're not finished. I opened my second folder. Now, Brian's will, written in his own hand on September 28, 2024, witnessed by Attorney Wilson, Dr. Cooper, and Connor Davis. I began reading. I, Brian Michael Hayes, being of sound mind and body, do hereby revoke all previous wills and declare this to be my final testament. To my wife, Vanessa Hayes, I leave her personal clothing, jewelry, and our wedding rings. I also leave her the 2020 Honda Civic currently registered in her name. Gasps around the room. The Honda Civic was worth maybe $15,000. To my father, Richard Hayes, who showed me what love and loyalty mean during the darkest time of my life, I leave everything else. The house at 1247 Summit Drive, valued at $2.1 million. Both Mercedes vehicles, valued at a combined $165,000. All investment accounts, totaling approximately $1.8 million. Life insurance proceeds of $500,000. All other personal property, business interests, and assets I possess at the time of my death. The room was dead silent, except for Vanessa's hyperventilating. Furthermore, I continued, Brian included a personal statement explaining his decision. I read his handwritten note. I am leaving everything to my father because he earned it. While my wife researched divorce lawyers and real estate agents, my father held my hand during chemotherapy. While my wife transferred our money into secret accounts, my father slept in hospital chairs to be near me. While my wife planned her future without me, my father helped me plan my final days with dignity. Love is measured in presence, not promises. Inheritance is earned through character, not marriage certificates. Vanessa collapsed back into her chair, sobbing. This can't be legal. Sharon Wilson pulled out the official documents. Mrs. Hayes, this will is completely legal, properly witnessed, and executed according to Oregon state law. Additionally, any attempt to contest this will trigger a no contest clause that would forfeit even the small inheritance you've been left. I stood up to address the room. For 6 years, Vanessa Hayes called me the plumber, like it was something shameful. She banned me from my son's house, forced me to meet him in coffee shops, and tried to erase me from his life completely. But when Brian was dying, she discovered something important. A plumber who loves his son will fight harder for that son than a wife who loves his money. I looked directly at Vanessa. You had 6 years to treat my son with love and his father with respect. Instead, you treated him like an investment and me like an embarrassment. Now you know what real embarrassment feels like. Derek Mackenzie was already packing up his briefcase. Vanessa's friends were heading for the door. Her parents sat in stunned silence, realizing their expected windfall had just evaporated. Mrs. Hayes, Sharon Wilson continued, we also need to discuss the items you sold illegally and the money you transferred without authorization. The estate will require full restitution within 30 days, or will be filing criminal charges. As the room emptied, Vanessa sat alone at the massive conference table, staring at nothing. I walked over to her chair. Vanessa, you could have had everything. All you had to do was love my son and let me love him too. She looked up at me with pure hatred. You destroyed my life. I picked up my folders and headed for the door. No, Vanessa, you destroyed your own life. I just documented it. The morning after the will reading, I woke up in my trailer for the last time. By evening, I'd be sleeping in my son's house, my house now. But first, I had some business to finish. My phone was ringing by 7 a.m. Detective Sarah Martinez from Portland Police. Mr. Hayes, I need to discuss some allegations made by Vanessa Hayes regarding elder abuse and financial coercion. I almost laughed. Detective, I'm the one who should be filing charges for theft, fraud, and charity scam operations. That's why I'm calling. Can you come in today? Bring your documentation. The Portland Police Bureau had seen plenty of family drama, but Detective Martinez admitted this case was unique. Mr. Hayes, I've reviewed the evidence you provided. This isn't elder abuse. This is you protecting your son from financial exploitation. I spread out my folders across her desk. 8 months of meticulous documentation. Here's what Vanessa Hayes did while my son was dying. Transferred $83,000 to secret accounts, researched divorce procedures, created a fake charity, and prearranged real estate sales. All documented with dates, times, and recorded evidence. And here's what she did after he died. Illegally sold his personal property, continued operating the fraudulent charity, and filed false police reports when the will reading didn't go her way. Detective Martinez was taking notes furiously. What are you requesting? I want criminal charges filed for theft in the 2nd degree for the items she sold. I want fraud charges for the fake charity, and I want restitution for every penny she stole from my son. The charity fraud alone could result in federal charges, Mr. Hayes. She collected donations under false pretenses. Then file federal charges. That afternoon, Sharon Wilson called with more updates. Richard, Vanessa's attorney, wants to negotiate. They're offering to return the transferred funds in exchange for you dropping criminal complaints. What's their timeline? Immediate restitution. Full payment within 48 hours. And if she doesn't pay?
Then she's looking at multiple felony charges and potential federal prosecution for the charity fraud. I thought about Brian, lying in that hospital bed, while his wife Googled real estate agents. No deals, Sharon. She pays everything back and faces the consequences. Brian didn't get to negotiate with cancer. By Wednesday, the dominoes were falling fast. Wells Fargo froze all of Vanessa's accounts pending the fraud investigation. Her secret account, her personal checking, even the fake charity account. The IRS launched an audit of the Brian Hayes Foundation, after I provided evidence that she'd been claiming tax deductions for fake charitable activities. Mackenzie Real Estate terminated their agreement and issued a public statement distancing themselves from any potential fraudulent real estate transactions. But the most satisfying consequence was social. Connor Davis had been documenting everything on social media with my permission.
Brian's real story was going viral in the Portland tech community. The narrative wasn't greedy father steals inheritance. It was devoted father exposes gold digger wife. Vanessa's lifestyle influencer brand collapsed overnight. Her remaining followers were leaving in droves, and the comments on her old posts were brutal. This is the woman who wouldn't visit her dying husband but found time to plan his estate sale. She was researching divorce lawyers while he was getting chemo. Absolutely disgusting. 184 visits from his dad versus 4 from his wife. The numbers don't lie. Global Tech Industries reached out to offer me Brian's Employee Memorial Fund benefits, money set aside to help families of deceased employees. Mr. Hayes, Brian was beloved here. We want to do something in his honor. Use the money to establish a scholarship for engineering students from working-class families. Call it the Brian Michael Hayes Memorial Scholarship. Consider it done. Thursday morning brought the best news yet. Detective Martinez called with an update. Mr. Hayes, Vanessa Hayes was arrested this morning for theft in the second degree, charity fraud, and filing false police reports. Bond is set at $50,000. Will she make bail? Unlikely. Her assets are frozen, her family has cut off contact, and her friends aren't returning her calls. What's the timeline for prosecution? District Attorney wants to make an example of this case. Charity fraud involving cancer research hits too close to home. They're pushing for maximum penalties. That evening, I drove to Brian's house to start moving in. The place where I'd been banned for 6 years was finally mine. Walking through the front door felt surreal. Everything was exactly as Brian had left it, except for the items Vanessa had sold. His coffee mug still sat in the dishwasher. His engineering books lined the shelves. His clothes hung in the closet. But it was the basement workshop that brought me to my knees. Brian had spent thousands of dollars creating a complete plumbing workspace, professional pipe threaders, soldering equipment, every tool a master plumber could want. On the workbench was a hand-carved sign, Hayes and Son Plumbing, 3 generations strong. 3 generations. He'd been planning for grandchildren. I found an envelope taped under the workbench with my name on it. Inside was a letter in Brian's handwriting, dated September 20th. Dad, I know Vanessa won't let you use this workshop while I'm alive, but it's yours now. I built it so we could work together again, like when I was a kid. I built it so my future children could learn from the best plumber in Portland, their grandfather. I'm sorry it took me so long to choose you over her. I love you. Brian. That night, Connor came over with Chinese takeout and a bottle of whiskey. Mr. Hayes, Brian would be so proud of what you did. I just told the truth, Connor. The truth she spent 8 months trying to hide. You did more than that. You protected his memory. You made sure his real wishes were honored. We ate dinner in Brian's kitchen, my kitchen now, and talked about plans for the workshop, the scholarship fund, and the future. Connor, I want you to know something. This house will always be open to Brian's real friends, the people who loved him for who he was, not what he had. What about Vanessa? I thought about that for a moment. Vanessa made her choices. Now she lives with the consequences. Justice, it turned out, tasted better than revenge. February 15th, 2025. Vanessa Hayes was sentenced to 18 months in county jail, 3 years probation, and full restitution of $97,000. The stolen funds plus interest and legal fees. She took the plea bargain. Connor called me from the courthouse. Mr. Hayes, it's over. She accepted the deal rather than face federal fraud charges. How did she look? Broken. Completely broken. Her hair was gray, she'd lost weight, and she looked like she'd aged 10 years. I felt no satisfaction, only sadness that it had come to this. The social consequences had been swift and devastating. Portland's tech community had rallied around Brian's memory and his father's vindication. Vanessa's influencer career was finished. Her social circle had evaporated, and her own family had publicly disowned her. Her mother, Patricia Dunmore, had posted on Facebook, We are ashamed of our daughter's actions and extend our deepest apologies to Richard Hayes, who showed more character during this tragedy than we ever knew was possible. The Brian Hayes Memorial Scholarship had raised over $200,000 from Brian's former colleagues, friends, and people who'd heard our story. The first recipient was Carlos Mendoza, whose father worked construction and whose mother cleaned office buildings. "Mr. Hayes," Carlos said at the scholarship dinner, "my parents wanted me to tell you that they understand what real love looks like now. A parent who fights for their child even when the child can't fight for themselves. But the most meaningful change was personal. I'd moved into Brian's house permanently, and for the first time in 6 years, it felt like a family home. Connor came by every Sunday for dinner. Dr. Cooper and his wife had become close friends. Jessica from Global Tech brought her kids over to use the basement workshop. Mr. Hayes," Jessica's 10-year-old son asked one afternoon while I taught him to solder copper pipes, "were you really sad when your son's wife was mean to you?" "Very sad, buddy." "But you didn't give up." "Never. When you love someone, you don't give up on them, even when it's hard." "My dad says you're a hero." "I'm not a hero. I'm just a dad who loved his son." The house had become a gathering place for something Brian would have loved. Engineering students and working-class families learning trades together. I'd started hosting monthly workshops where kids could learn basic plumbing, electrical work, and home repair. Hands-on skills build character, I'd tell them, and character is the only inheritance that really matters. The most unexpected development was my relationship with some of Vanessa's former friends. 3 of the women who'd been at that disastrous brunch had reached out to apologize. "Mr. Hayes," said Ashley, the queen bee who'd once smirked at my presence, "we had no idea what Vanessa was really doing. We thought you were just difficult family dynamics." "Difficult family dynamics?" "You know, class differences, generational gaps. We didn't realize she was actively excluding you and planning to steal from Brian." "What made you change your mind?" "The evidence you presented. The hospital records, the secret accounts. We realized we'd been enabling financial abuse without knowing it. Ashley had even made a substantial donation to the scholarship fund. I want to help kids from families like yours afford college. Kids whose parents work with their hands and their hearts. Spring 2025 brought the most satisfying development yet. The first Brian Hayes Memorial Workshop. 20 engineering students and 20 trade apprentices working together on a Habitat for Humanity house. College kids learning how to swing hammers. Trade students learning engineering principles. Everyone discovering that intelligence comes in many forms." "This is what Brian would have wanted," Connor said as we watched future engineers and future plumbers collaborate on framing a wall. "Breaking down the barriers that divide working families and professional families." "You know what's funny?" I told him. "Vanessa spent 6 years trying to divide Brian from his working-class roots. Now his legacy is bringing working-class kids and college kids together." That evening I got an unexpected call. "Mr. Hayes, this is Vanessa." I'd changed my number twice, but somehow she'd found it. "I'm out on work release. I wanted to apologize." "Okay. I know sorry doesn't fix anything. I know I can't undo what I did to you and Brian, but I needed you to know that I understand now. I understand what I lost." "What did you lose, Vanessa?" "I lost the chance to be part of a real family. I lost the chance to know a man who loved his son unconditionally. I lost Brian because I was too proud to see what real love looked like." I was quiet for a long moment. "Vanessa, Brian loved you even at the end, even after he changed the will. That's what made this so hard for him." "I know. That makes it worse. Where are you now?" "Transitional housing. Working at a nonprofit that helps families navigate grief counseling. Trying to do something useful with my life." "That's good. Brian would be proud of you for trying." "Mr. Hayes." "Yes. Thank you for fighting for him, even when he couldn't fight for himself." After I hung up, I sat in Brian's workshop and thought about forgiveness. Not for her sake, but for mine. Some wounds heal when justice is served. Others heal when understanding replaces anger. June 22nd, 2025. 1 year after Brian's death, 6 months after the will reading that changed everything. I was sitting in what used to be Brian's home office, which had become my home office, paying bills with money I'd never expected to have. But more importantly, I was planning events with people I'd never expected to know. The second annual Brian Hayes Memorial Scholarship Dinner was next month. We'd raised enough money to support 5 students this year, 3 future engineers from working-class families, and 2 trade apprentices pursuing advanced certifications. Connor knocked on the door frame. "Mr. Hayes, the caterer needs final numbers for the dinner." 120 confirmed, plus the scholarship recipients and their families. Brian would love this, you know. I think he would. Family dinner with people who actually cared about him. The past 6 months had taught me something important about inheritance. It's not just about money or property. It's about values, relationships, and the kind of legacy you choose to build. I'd kept Brian's room exactly as he left it, but I'd transformed the rest of the house into something he would have been proud of, a place where his friends gathered, where young people learned skills, where working families felt welcome. Dr. Cooper and his wife came by every Sunday for dinner. Jessica from Global Tech brought her family monthly for workshop sessions. Carlos Mendoza, our first scholarship recipient, spent weekends learning advanced plumbing techniques in the basement. "Mr. Hayes," Carlos said one afternoon while we worked on a complex pipe joint, "my engineering professors don't understand why I want to learn trades too." "What do you tell them?" "I tell them that your son was an engineer who understood that all skills have value, that building things with your hands teaches you to think differently about problems." That's exactly right. The biggest change was internal. For 6 years I'd been fighting for scraps of my son's time and attention. Now I was spending every day honoring his memory in ways that felt meaningful. The Hayes and Son plumbing business had grown beyond anything I'd imagined. Word had spread about the plumber who inherited millions, and people hired me not just for my skills, but for my story. "Tell me about your son," they'd say while I fixed their water heaters. And I would, every time. Because keeping Brian's story alive, the real story, not Vanessa's version, was the most important work I'd ever done. That evening, I got a text from an unknown number. "Mr. Hayes, this is Vanessa. I'm being released from work release next month. I wanted you to know I'm moving to Seattle to start over. I'll never contact you again, but I wanted to say one last thing. Brian was lucky to have you as a father. I was too stupid to see it when it mattered." I stared at the message for a long time before responding. "Vanessa, everyone deserves a second chance to be better than their worst moments. Brian would want you to find peace." I never heard from her again. As summer settled over Portland, I found myself spending evenings in Brian's basement workshop, surrounded by the tools he'd bought for a grandfather he'd never become. But the workshop wasn't empty. It was full of young people learning skills, families working on projects together, friends collaborating on community service. One evening, Connor found me down there, teaching his nephew how to thread pipe. "Mr. Hayes, can I ask you something? Anything? Do you ever regret fighting so hard? The investigation, the documentation, the confrontation? Do you ever wish you'd just let it go?" I thought about that for a moment, watching Connor's nephew concentrate on the pipe threading technique. "Connor, for 6 years I let Vanessa control my relationship with Brian because I was afraid of losing him completely. When he got sick, I realized I'd rather fight for him and lose than give up and wonder what might have been. And now? Now I know something I didn't know before. Love that's worth having is worth fighting for, and Brian's love was worth fighting for. Even though it cost Vanessa everything? I didn't cost Vanessa everything. Her choices cost her everything. I just made sure those choices had consequences. I looked around the workshop, filled with young people learning from each other, breaking down the barriers between working class and professional class that had caused so much pain. Character is the only inheritance that really matters, Connor. Everything else is just money. And if someone else is watching this story and they're in a similar situation? I thought about all the people who'd reached out since our story went public. Parents who'd been excluded by in-laws, families torn apart by class differences, working people who'd been made to feel ashamed of honest labor. I'd tell them this: your worth isn't determined by other people's opinions. It's determined by how you love, how you show up, and how you treat people when no one is watching. And if they're being excluded or humiliated by family members, document everything. Fight for your relationships. Set boundaries. And remember that sometimes the best way to honor someone you love is to protect them from people who want to use them. As the sun set over the West Hills, I looked at the workshop Brian had built for the grandfather he'd never become, now filled with the children and grandchildren of his friends. Some stories don't end with revenge. Some stories end with family, the real kind.